Hello, and welcome to another episode of Magicians Only, sponsored by the fabulous Magic on the Go. Almost 1,000 tricks in your pocket. You can learn magic wherever you are, anywhere, at any time. It's a resource more than a course. It's an ever-growing museum, encyclopedia, and interactive way to learn magic, and it's the best. And I'm obviously very biased because it's my project. But anyway, Magic on the Go sponsors this amazing podcast, Magicians Only, which is of course just for magicians. Are you a magician? It's okay. You don't have to be a magician to listen to this. So yes, this is another episode of Magicians Only. They keep on rolling, don't they? Just like tantric orgasms. Also, I'm told. Anyway, today's episode is really interesting because this was on Magic on the Go for a while, and it's part of the egg bag teach-in that I have on Magic on the Go. If you've ever seen a magician do a trick with an egg or a bag, if you are a magician and you want to learn that trick, then you might want to check out Magic on the Go. There's an egg bag tutorial that's a deep dive with over 80 videos on the subject. Now, this isn't about the methods. This is about a guy who was an exponent of the egg bag and did an amazing job and was a wonderful performer. I saw him live at the Magic Castle year after year. He reminded me kind of the Don Rickles of Magic is kind of how I always thought about him. His name is Ricki Dunn, and he was a pickpocket and magician. And man, he was a ball of energy. He knew how to entertain an audience, take charge, and you didn't mess with Ricki on stage or off stage. Actually, he was an amazing friend, but also you didn't want to get on his bad side, which we're going to get into as we definitely near the end of this interview. So I'm going to send you over to the original taping of this interview. It is with Paul Romhany and a special guest. Paul Romhany, of course, being the proprietor of Vanish magazine, the online magazine, which is hugely successful, and also Paul is an amazing performer himself. He appears as Chaplin doing magic and a bunch of other acts, and he really knows his stuff. He's written a whole bunch of books. But I will say this one thing about the interview. This was a couple of years ago, so I do look good. I do look a lot better than I do now. I'm a little younger. This interview was filmed over Zoom during roughly near the end of the lockdown. I was in Los Angeles. I was shooting episodes of a show called Mum. And so I was there doing that. And so I'm in a hotel room with this horrifically gaudy background. So that explains that. It's not my house. And two, it was recorded on Paul's system. There's a few moments where it kind of goes in and out, where we have some glitching. It's not a matrix thing. It's not like a universe glitching. It's literally just Zoom glitching. Okay. So just so that you know, it's not you and it's not the system here at Magic on the Go. It's, or Magicians Only. It is that Zoom system. Check out the show notes because there'll be a link to some of Ricki's performances, so you can see the man that we're talking about. And also, if you're interested in the egg bag, you can see his performance of the egg bag. I think he does a lovely job with it. He kind of uses it as an excuse to pick people's pockets, which is actually in and of itself a much harder thing to do these days. It's hard as a magician. Things change. People don't carry stuff in their pockets like they used to. There's a fabulous trick called the cap and the pence. And for those who don't know, what it is you borrow 6 giant pennies or $half. You borrow a matchbox and maybe a cigarette, and then you make the coins change places and vanish with a little piece of cigarette or a little mint or something. And you used to be able to borrow all of these props. You can't do that anymore. Nobody's got matches on them. Nobody's got $half or big giant English pennies. So you have to have an excuse to bring in those props out. Same goes for a trick like the knife through the jacket, where you borrow someone's coat and you stick a knife through it and then you leave it unharmed. Great trick, amazing routine. Bob Reed used to kill with it. A lot of people I know, like Matt DeZero, still perform it. Billy Kidd does a version of it. But you know, there are times when no one in the audience will have a jacket. It's just the way it is. And so you have to move with the times. It's getting harder to borrow money, cash, credit cards. Everything's on the phone. The phone is everything. So for pickpockets, it's doubly hard. One, there's less for people to steal. Right, so there's less stuff in there. Used to be, you look at the old video of the pickpockets, and what have they got? They've got wallets and envelopes and letters and all this stuff that they used to carry around, and giant sets of keys, and not so much anymore. Now they have a phone, maybe a car key, and a condom. That's pretty much it. if you're lucky. Of course, there's also kind of people are much more sensitive about being touched on stage. People are much more sensitive in the audience's period. We're going to talk about that in another episode. We recently saw something happen while I was out performing to a comedian that I think Will Smith has a lot to answer for. But we'll talk about that in another episode, all right? So right now, let's take a look at, we're going to be talking about the egg bag. We're going to be talking about the great Ricki Dunn with the help of Paul Romhany and a special guest. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to Magic on the Go, another Armchair Stories, a very, very special one that has to do with the egg bag, but also a master of the egg bag. He did so much with it. You've already gone to see his performance on the Magic Palace. I am, of course, talking about the great Ricki Dunn and the late Ricki Dunn. And Ricki was... if you look at the performance on the Magic Palace, one of the things you'll see is that the assistants he gets up really mess with the timing of the trick. And I always thought it was a shame that the ending of the trick was kind of destroyed by these assistants who were messing around. So, and you could tell that Ricki's kind of pissed off. And he's like one of those kind of hardcore Borscht belts, kind of like takes no prisoners kind of performers. And you could tell he was behaving himself on camera. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Paul Romhany, about this. And he said, "Oh, I know Ricki." And he said, "You know, Ricki, we lived together for a while in Las Vegas." And I immediately jumped on that and said, we have to talk about this on camera. So let me bring in, please welcome, put your hands together, Mr. Paul Romhany.
Was that your attempt at the New Zealand accent, by the way?
Mr. Paul Romhany? Everything's a question. Is that right?
I think it might be Australian, but you're pretty close. Not bad for an actor.
Yeah, thanks. When I was there, I started doing it, and people thought I was taking the piss. But there you go.
Hey, Steve,
yeah. How are you, Paul?
I'm excellent, thanks. Good. And this is really great that you're talking about Ricki, because Ricki was my mentor. You know, I first heard about Ricki when I was about 13. It was from I think it was Supreme Book of Magic, a Dove Magic. Might have been the Ian Adair book, because Ricki was the creator of the Dove from Streamer. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he created a lot of stuff. But and so that's how I first knew Ricki Dunn, because I had one made up when I was about 13, and you'd come out with a streamer and produce a Dove. And then I was about 18 when he started touring New Zealand with Chuck Jones and Marvin Roy and so on. And then I got to know him or meet him. And then about early 20s, I got to tour for many years throughout Australia and New Zealand with Ricki. And then we became very close. And then our friendship built upon that. And I would go and visit him in Vegas. And as you said, I stayed with him for a couple of months after his spinal operation. And then, but what a character. I mean, I've got everybody that knows Ricki has a story about him. And I got hundreds of them.
As a Ricki Dunn story. Well, let's go back to what you were saying about being on tour with. I should explain people who there's a style of comedian and performer, right? That Ricki comes from, that old school kind of take no prisoners. You had to go out and grab the audience and keep hold of them. And the one thing I love about Ricki as a performer, and I saw him a number of times at the Magic Castle, was that he had absolute authority over the audience. He scared
the heck out of them, I think. But it was, I think so. It was his style of performing, and as you said, the reason his act worked was, and it possibly wouldn't work today. I think his style might be too brash for today's audience. I'm not sure. Too aggressive. Aggressive.
Everyone's so sensitive these days that
So, but he came from a time where, I mean, he was very good friends with Robert Orban, who, of course, was, I think, a president's speech writer, a famous script writer. So, very close friends with him. But so that sort of style of performing those one-liners, bang, bang, he wouldn't let up. But the secret was, and I think this is part of the secret, was all those, that was misdirection. You see, he was, because not just the line, every single line was there for a reason with Ricki. Because I saw his act literally thousands of times, night after night. And he never, in my opinion, he never died on his ass once. He would always come off stage going, "That was the worst show of my life." But for everyone else,
but he killed.
But he killed.
But wasn't he really kind of the most devastating kind of magician, in that he was a comedy magician with real chops, with real skill? He's not just going out and doing an invisible deck on the pom-pom stick. He's doing
real pickpocketing and an egg bag, and everything seemed to have an original twist. I mean, his egg bag, for example.
Well, his egg bag is phenomenal. I don't have his original egg bag, but I have. Well, actually, I do have his original egg bag. What am I saying? It's the one I use. I have the Malini.
Oh, you do?
He had the Malini egg. Well, I don't. He had the Malini. He had several egg bags, but he had a Malini egg bag. This is a bag he had for changing a watch. I think vanishing a watch that he had made up with his specifications, and that's in his book.
And that's one, just so people understand, that's in Ricki's book, and the idea is, and it kind of goes back to Paul Stadelman idea that you drop the watch in the bag, but it looks like it goes through a hole in the bag and falls to the floor, right?
Yep. He had a lot of different things like this. He was a creator, but he had a fascination with mentalism, with everything. So I mean, he was really schooled in the craft, and he honed his craft. He ran away to join the circus. I mean, he was really hard.
Literally?
Yeah, no, he really did. He was really hardcore. And the reason his act worked so well, and he told me this because near the end of his life, when I was visiting him or staying with him, he said to me, he said, "What?" He said, "Paul, you're the only person." I have to ask you a question. He said, "You're the only person that's never asked me to teach them my act." And I said, well, "Why would I ask?" No, it just never occurred to me to even ask him how to do anything because I respected him so much. And there's only one Ricki Dunn. You could never copy his act. And because I stayed with him for several months and I helped, so many stories, I helped write his book. I helped, not write it, but I transcribed it from his old notes to the new computer that he bought, which I ended up getting to keep because he got so frustrated. This is an example of Ricki. And he said he was writing his book on his life and pickpocketing. And he said, which I have the original transcript here. And he said,
wow.
He said, actually, it's more in this than there is in the book. He said he got so frustrated with the new computer, he wanted a laptop. So we went out and bought this Toshiba laptop, which was probably 6 times the size of this back in the day, 20 years ago. And he got so frustrated with it after a month, I caught him trying to throw it out the window. Because he just, I hate this. You have it. So I ended up with his laptop, and which I still have in storage, and it's got the original book and everything on it. But that's how he was. He was the nicest person. But what he said to me was, one of the biggest things he said was with pickpocketing or pocket putting, which is the egg bag, because you're putting things in people's pockets. With the egg bag, he was putting baby chicks in their pockets. And this is the number one thing with pickpocketing, is you have to be really comfortable with just touching people. You have to be really touchy-feely. So with Ricki, he would, like in just ordinary day life, Ricki would just touch you,
So you got to make that a part of who you are, so that you're not suddenly doing it when you get the person up on stage, right? You've got to be that person, kind of the huggy, the 2 arms, the 2 handshake, and
then touching everywhere.
That makes sense.
And I think 99% of people feel uncomfortable. Now I think 100% of people feel uncomfortable with what's going on in the world today.
Right now. Pickpocketing is not the And look, here's COVID.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But that was the number one thing he said to me was, and because at the time I was not like that. I was very reserved, and so I trained myself, and I really had to train myself for like a decade. Really did, to feel comfortable. And now if you meet me, I mean, I'm just, hey, how are you? Tap you on the back, or
Yeah, it's a bit too much actually, but we'll talk about.
Oh, sorry. Well, that was it. So
I remember when you slapped mid butt. I was like, that's just.
I was trying to think of another nicer word for ass, but you said butt, so that works.
Yeah.
But I did get your wallet.
Yeah, that's true. And you made copies, and now you're selling it. So the thing with working with Rick, I mean, he didn't teach you his act, but you kind of must have pretty much learned it by osmosis.
I could do it.
You saw it thousands of times.
You
could teach it to somebody else if you wanted to.
I can to this day, I can do it word for word, every line. But now we're getting back to those lines, and everything was there for a reason. And for me, that was all part of the misdirection, because he'd say something to you that would put you off guard. Now, like a comedy line, a funny line, and it would put you off guard, and people's sense, they'd be laughing, their senses would go down, and then they'd go in for the kill, which is to take something probably, So it was always on. It was just incredible to watch.
So the humor misdirected, and then the person would relax, and it was the lack of attention for a certain moment, and he would take advantage of that. Huh?
Yeah, and it just scripting. I mean, every movement. It was like watching a ballerina, every or a dancer. Everything is there. Every move is there. I sort of take.
So we have this video of him on Magic Palace, which is great. It's on magicana.com.
There's two videos on Magic Palace of him. One of the
that's right. He did two spots. Yeah.
But sorry, carry on, Steve. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're talking about the egg.
No.
Right?
There's two videos of him, and we can see him in action, which is great. Is there any other video? Is there much other video out there of his full act, so that people can see what you're talking about with the with the timing and the kind of.
Well, if you get the book comes with, I think, his full 12-minute act. I think, which is shot at the castle. I'd have to ask.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd have to check. I do have it. I probably have video of it. In fact, I know I have video of it. There is a DVD with the book, and it's his pickpocket act.
That's the stage pickpocket, right?
If only I knew somebody. If only I knew somebody.
We knew someone
who had
that book. Before we do cut to a special guest, would you? Can you give us like an example of something that happened on stage with Ricki that was maybe seared in your mind? You said there's a lot of Ricki stories. I'm sure a lot of them were off stage.
Yes, I can.
Give us an idea of
Ricki for the longest time, Ricki performed his two quick stories. One was traveling around Australia and New Zealand. He would work in the summertime, and these are full theatres, beautiful theatres. In the summertime, and in the summertime in New Zealand and Australia, people wore t-shirts, or men, and you only got men on set, would wear t-shirts, shorts, and what we call jandals, which I think you call those flip-flops.
Yeah.
In New Zealand we call them jandals.
Of course you do. Yeah.
And so it was almost. Now here's a real amazing tip that I learned. I learned so much from just watching him, because I got to travel with him and Marvin Roy and stuff. It's incredible. But
amazing. Yeah.
So here's what happened. So it was almost for anyone else. I would say for anyone else, it would be impossible to take anything from these guys, because they might as well be naked, because they had nothing. They had no jackets. You couldn't do the normal thing.
Yeah.
But nothing fazed Ricki, even though he was grumbling and angry and mad and hated the shows and wanted to go home. Nothing fazed him. And in fact, the special guest might have something to say, because he also toured with those shows with Ricki during those times.
Okay.
But the thing that Ricki did, which was really smart, and I do it to this day in every show, he would, 20 minutes before the show, he would just go stand outside and watch all the audience come in. And he wasn't getting this, no stooges, just stand and watch everybody come in. And then he would observe the audience. So because his act was so perfectly timed, he had to know before he came out who he was going to get, pretty much.
Right.
And so every single, from that's the one, I learned a lot of things, but the big thing I learned was casing the joint or the audience before you go out, so you get a feel for who you're going to get up. It might change through the show because things change, but he had so when he went on stage, he knew what he was up against, and he knew who would potentially be good. And you know yourself.
So he would,
I mean, you know.
So he would be able to pick. He would be able to pick kind of the best of the worst, right? So you could see, that guy's wallet. Because also, I guess he could see what people have in their pockets, if they're glasses, and and he's able to choose.
So he would. So by the time, even though it was the hardest thing for a pickpocket, and I swear he killed every show, and he came off. And that's the other thing I think I got from him. And for those that know me, every time I do a show, I think it's terrible, and maybe it is, but but I got that from Ricki. He was
never satisfied.
He was never satisfied, and there's lots of. I actually find myself turning into Ricki as I'm getting older, which isn't anyway.
I've noticed that.
This is my attitude towards magic and magicians in general.
Towards magic and magicians and audiences.
Well, you just see.
Why am I doing this?
You see it all. You know. But he would give you the shirt off his back. He helped so many people. And never wanted anything in return. He was a genuinely an amazing person. I loved him. He was just incredible.
Do you think? Oh, hang on a minute. There's the air conditioning started here, and it's very noisy. So I want to turn it off.
I thought he'd never leave. Oh, which reminds me. That's a Ricki Dunn joke. I see. He's with me every day. Here's something that joke. So, and I do this all the time. So you might be in a group of people, you're having fun, and everyone's laughing.
Yeah.
And I forgot I do that joke, and it's his. He did it. He did it.
Oh my God! Really, that came from him because that's a line that I used for
I don't know if it's his
years.
line,
I
but
thought they'd never leave.
it's probably a Robert Orban line, but it's a line I got from Ricki. And he would do it. So you're in a group of people, and it's fun and serious. I do it on every Zoom call. So somebody gets off, and you just go, "Oh my God! I thought they'd never leave."
It's a great line.
I got that from Ricki. Oh, isn't that funny? All these things that just keep flooding back, and I got that from him.
I think we're in an era right now where maybe a lot of the magicians up and coming are really focusing on the magic, which is fine, the visual magic and the kind of and just using the magic as the form of entertainment, when we're kind of losing a lot of that cabaret and that stage kind of what it takes to get the threads of an audience and to hold them and to entertain and to deal with what some people will call heckling, but I think often is just people having a good time and taking part in the show and knowing how to handle it. Somebody getting up and going to the bathroom, for example, is a perfect example of, I'm sure Ricki would get 10 minutes out of that, know. Yeah. And I used to have so much fun when someone gets up and then you're giving them kind of hell as they're leaving and they're going to the bathroom, and are you sure you really want to go? Because they're going to miss. It's going to be fabulous. I swear to God, I thought they'd never leave. And it's just. Yeah. And then building it up to the point of like, okay, when they come back.
Hang on, I'm just going to write that down.
This is probably a Ricki bit, but when they come back, I would say to the crowd, when they come back, because 80% of people don't wash their hands, okay? So here's what we'll do. I'll shake their hand when they come back, and if their hand is warm and dry, I'll go like this, and we boo. But if their hand is wet and cold, I'll go like this. It means they wash their hands, and we'll cheer, okay? But don't tell them why, all right? So then we do the act, person comes back in, and I'll say, oh, yeah, what was the old line? Could you hear us in there? We could hear you out here, blah, blah, blah. So when you shake their hand, and always, I would never do this. I would always do this, even if they didn't wash their hands, because it was another cheer in the show. The crowd was just, the guy looks shocked. And you connect with the audience that way. And I got the impression, just watching Ricki on Magic Palace and the few times I saw him at the castle, that he was that guy. He had his act that was timed, but he could make a left turn, go down a road, and then kind of bring it back to him. I mean, pickpocketing is, by its very nature, somewhat improvisational, isn't it? Because you don't know what you're going to find.
Yes, it is. But his act was, he did, the thing I liked about Ricki's act was that he didn't, I've seen a few other pickpockets, and what made Ricki different was that he didn't announce himself as a pickpocket. It wasn't. Every other act I've seen is "Let's please welcome the pickpocket," and every other act I've seen around the world, their act has been more of a demonstration of pickpocketing, and I always thought that was a bit. I didn't like that because it
puts the audience on guard, doesn't it?
Well, not only that, but it's like it's an excuse if you're not that good. It's like, oh, we saw him do that, but then it's kind of, I feel it's a demonstration. Ricki did it as a magic, all the magic, like the 6 cards across. He did that. He did, obviously his whole routine with the lemon and the egg and everything.
That's on Magic Palace.
Dance fool. Everything was designed around a magic trick. So the pickpocketing wasn't forefront. He came out as a magician, but the pickpocketing was, I mean, at the end, when he brought out all those watches and belts and ties and things, the audience goes nuts.
Did Ricki have a special technique for a watch steal that you know of?
Yes,
or was it the tradition?
No. I mean, he developed it. He developed different. If you look at, we'll have a look at his book, but he developed different techniques for watches. In fact, he did teach me his watch steal. But I mean, it's just a pretty. I have got a watch here. I could use my smartwatch. But it's the same sort of thing where and then you take it off. It's done in such a way that, and he talks about it in the book, and we'll have a look at that. But the first time he took my watch, it was totally unexpected. He'd never ever done it. But after near the end of his life, we were at the Magic Castle, and he wasn't that well, but he sort of grabbed me because I thought he was going to fall or something, and he just grabbed me for a split second. And I said, "You okay?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm fine." And we carried on to the Magic Castle. Well, a couple of hours later, he said, "What?" Like he just held on to it, and I had no clue. And it's the first and only time he ever stole my watch. He thought it was hilarious. He just said to me, "I've still got it," I thought it was really lovely because he did it just to see if he still had it. And he did.
There was a wonderful magician by the name of Chappie Brazil who
Yes,
died
of course,
too young, and he would, in the early 90s at the castle, he would take great pleasure in continually stealing my watch every time I saw him, to the point where I would get angry. I'd be like, stop it. Because half the time he just would wait for the perfect moment, or he'd have me do a trick, and just, it should drive me crazy. I wonder how Ricki would get on with the iWatches of today, because those straps are a little different now, aren't they?
Yeah, well, a lot of the watches are. I don't know. I don't have an iWatch. I'm not.
Should we say hello to our special guest?
Yes, we will, because he's got an iWatch. It's you want me to bring him on, or do you want to?
Yeah, no, you please.
I'll bring him on.
Please, yes.
So our special guest is a very dear friend of mine, and he's an extremely close friend of Ricki, and he got to tour with Ricki as well. But he knew Ricki really, really well, and so one of the best magicians I've ever known. Please welcome Hal Meyers, Art Card Damien. There he is.
Yay!
Oh, wow.
Hello, welcome.
There you are. You're in frame.
Hi.
Hi. We look like the three.
How are you guys doing?
Great.
Yeah. Well, first, before I forget, I spoke to Bob Orban last week.
Oh, did you really?
Did he respond?
Oh yeah. He's, I check in on him at least once or twice a month, just find out how he's doing. Yeah.
Oh,
he's great.
You serious? He's still alive? I didn't know that.
How old is he now? And 94.
Wow. Okay, that you heard it here first, everybody. Bob Orban's still alive.
But please don't reach out, and he doesn't really want to talk to anybody. But I just, you mentioned him twice, and I was like, wow. One day he turned to me and he said, "Well, nobody, he says, nobody cares." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Bob."
That's so not true. He has helped magicians around the world. I do remember a funny article I read in the Magic Wand magazine once when the Robert Orban books were flooding England, and a lot of British magicians were doing American one-liners and comedy patter. And I remember this article written by a very snotty English magician that was begging his brethren to stop using American colloquialisms in their patter, because nobody knows what a dime is. Please, let's go back to the Queen's English. That was the impact. Well,
there was another reason. That's amazing. There was another reason I could never do Ricki's act, because it wasn't who I was. It was who Ricki was. It wasn't who I was. So you can't do someone else's act because it's who that person is.
Yes.
Forward.
So I see.
Who's the forward guy?
There it is.
Move it into frame.
No,
Bob Orban. Yeah.
There you go. Forward by Bob. That's in Ricki's book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ricki's book is the stage pickpocket.
The professional stage.
Yes.
The professional stage pickpocket. And is this still available, or is it out of print?
I think you can probably get it still through Norm Nielsen Magic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Norm is the one Norm and Lupe published it. And you had also mentioned, I wanted to show this too, before we go into all the stuff. There is this DVD, his act.
See, that's fantastic. So you can read about it and then see it in action. And I think that's what a great combination of both things. So tell us about your experiences with Ricki, because I think, and then maybe we can talk about the egg bag specifically.
Yeah. Well, I met Ricki probably in 1980 or 81. I was touring. I was doing a show that landed in Miami Beach, and Ricki was on the ships at the time. And he would come in, and he was very good friends with another friend of mine who had a magic bar called Warren Lee, really super guy I've known for over 40-some years, and Howard Brooks.
Oh.
And Howard Brooks was living in that area. So Ricki would come and stay with Howard. So we all got together and we would hang out. Everyone introduced me to Ricki, and the first thing Ricki looked at me and he goes, "What the hell are you doing?" He yelled at me because I'm sitting there doing seconds. I'm doing seconds and passes and stuff. He goes, "What?" Now I'm a stage manipulator.
Okay.
I don't talk. I was doing doves and very hard manipulate. The guy who got me my first gig was Ricciardi. Long story, but Anyway,
Wow.
Ricki became
that's a clang.
very,
Let's just
very.
pick up that name. That's fantastic. That was
Well,
that's the guy that
I throw it out because that's all I can do is throw out names. But
did Richie already put you in his show, or did he get you a gig?
No, he got me this gig, and the gig he got me lasted 3 years. My first stop was in Spain, then Miami, then Brazil, then Chicago, then back to Miami. I mean, it was like, it was great. That's we'll talk later on because that's another story. But Ricki, when he was away, my friend Warren and I would visit Howard. Howard was the guy who invented the bra trick.
Right, that's it. Yep.
Howard Brooks invented the bra trick.
Wow, I bet if he had a dime for everyone who did the bra trick,
he'd have $1.
Million. Yeah.
And
you don't think about that. You don't think about someone actually had to come up with the idea first. But
and
just a side note. Just a side note on the bra trick, because everyone knows this is my one pet hate trick.
Pet peeve, right?
A side note on the bra trick. Everyone's doing the bra trick not the way it was designed. The original routine was completely different than what people are doing now.
And what was the original routine?
Hal, do you want to answer that?
No, because I never did it.
Oh no, I thought you. No, I wrote
It'd be really weird for a stage manipulator to suddenly move into the bra routine.
Yeah, no, I thought
balls.
I thought it was you, Hal, that told me. I did some research on the bra trick, and the original instructions by Howard, he did it on a guy, and it was completely. It wasn't on a girl. It was on a guy, and it was done in such a different way than people are doing it now, and that's the original instruction. It wasn't intended to put anybody down, or you know how people are doing it now. It was very different. He designed it very differently.
Well, it was originally I'm sorry to interrupt. It was originally done by Howard and a comedian in like a burlesque show with one of the strippers. Yeah. So it was a perfectly normal thing at the time, and of course the burlesque girl was like, oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So it was a funny thing.
Set up. Whereas, it was preset, and that's how it was.
Nobody's going to be offended if they're going to a burlesque show that you're doing the bra trick.
And now people are doing it.
I do confess. Sorry. I do confess in my mid-20s to doing the bra trick. I don't do it anymore, let me point out, but I did do the bra trick, and the reason I took it out of the show was the reaction was always so much greater than what it in many ways deserved, and so therefore the other material kind of didn't step up to that reaction. So it was like, so I'm not going to close on the bra trick, so what do you do? But I did a corporate show, and I get this woman up, and she was very well endowed, and I remember I did the bra trick, and the house came down. I mean, it was 5 minutes of solid laughter, and I couldn't understand. You know, when something goes so well that you're kind of like, am I missing something? Mm-hmm. What's why is this? So finally, after the show, and I did a straitjacket escape after that, and it didn't go as well. Like it would just stop, killed the show in a strange way. It killed the show. And afterwards, the woman says, "Oh, that was so funny." She says, "You don't understand. I just got my boobs done, and I've been bragging to the guys in the office all week about how I've got my new boobs, and then you did the bra thing." And yeah,
I'm not against it. I think if it's done correctly and it's done in the right situation, it's funny. Right. But my beef recently was a kids magician doing it on a 7-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, that's bordering on something that should be locked. So that's bordering on something else.
I agree. That's
my beef with it. I don't, I have a good friend that does. I'm sorry, but Howard Brooks is the.
Oh yeah. So right, anyways, but
sorry.
Yeah. So Howard did it anyway. So, and by the way, Howard probably worked with Ricki on the egg bag, because Howard has a sensational egg bag. Now I again, that's another thing I never did. But Howard used to do the egg bag, and at the very end, he would produce a bottle, a shot glass of whiskey, and drink it. Yeah. And Howard had a huge routine. I could actually research it for you, because my friend Warren, Howard taught it to him, like verbatim, the whole thing, and it still does.
I'd love to.
He still does it.
Is that Warren? Warren and Annabelle's?
Warren Lee, who lives in the Miami area. Anyway, you both said something. You both said something that was real interesting about Ricki.
Come on, Hal, hold it together.
He had an act.
Well, yeah.
He had an act. Very different than today.
Yeah.
Ricki had a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yep, that's what he taught me too. Yep.
Very important. And everything
structure and flow.
was timed.
Yeah.
Structure and flow. I've seen a lot of people today when they're doing Zoom things, for instance, where they don't put the time and the effort into every little nuance of what they're doing. You know, it's like when people would listen to Robin Williams comedy. Okay, you listen and you're like, wow, and then he'd go off improv and like realize that the whole thing was written, and he would go along, then maybe diverge, and then come back to the script.
Yeah,
and that's what Ricki.
When you have when you have a strong framework, you feel comfortable to do that, right?
Yeah. See now, and you know, Ricki, I don't care who you were, you couldn't follow him. Nobody could follow him. I used to open for him all the time, and it was a pleasure because I would do my thing, which was okay, and it was set it up so that when he came out, he could kill, and you couldn't stop him. Once he got started, it was great. Now, the line you said at the very end, he goes, "Oh, that was the worst show of my life," when he came off the stage. I got him a gig in Atlantic City, and he did that, and he came off, and the booker, the manager was there, and she heard that, and she's like, she called the agent, and the agent called me. He goes, "What the hell was?" I said, "Oh my gosh, no, that's just a figure of speech. You know, he killed, because I was there. He killed, always killed. And like when Paul said, you know, even in New Zealand, he killed in New Zealand. When there was when
people are in shorts and t-shirts,
right. Well, what happened for instance, on the cruise ships, I did 3 years of cruising, like 1986, 87, 88, and then I went cold turkey. I hated it. Right. But what happened was when I first started, they would suggest every night is formal night. People were dressed. They were dressed to the nines. I mean, it was beautiful. Then, as Carnival Cruise Lines became more popular, all of a sudden, formal night, you'd see people running around in Bermuda shorts.
Right.
Well, all of a sudden, the audiences started less and less dressing. And then people like Ricki, who had an act that really required a man to wear a tie, a belt, maybe have their wallet, comb. All that started disappearing. Well, he figured out ways to make it work, but it got tougher and tougher and tougher. And sometimes he would steal the same. If the guy had a wallet, he would steal it like 5 times. Just take it and keep putting it back, pull it out, put it back. You know, that's kind of what happened. But you know, one of the funniest moments I think I ever saw, I was working with him. I think it was at the Magic Island in Houston. And he's standing there and he's pulling the guy's belt off. And if you've never, he's talking to the guy and he has the guy looking in his coat first. Yeah. And while the guy is looking in the coat for the lost money, which is the thing, he would burn the bill, the lost money, he's stealing the guy's belt. And the whole audience sees the belt just coming through like this. Is this coming through Ricki's fingers? He's pulling it like this, and it's just sliding out. And the audience is on the floor screaming because this guy has no idea. And then he gets to the very end, and he turns, and the audience sees him flash the belt. The guy has no idea. He turns, and he says, "Did you see?" And as he does that, he rolls up the belt, and he sticks it in his top it. He's one of the first people to use the top it, not necessarily to throw things in, but to hold them. Well, he would set up the tie steal. The audience is watching it, and they're laughing, and the laughter is building and building. And then he just turns, and as he turns, he's got the tie in his hand. He turns. You see the tie come off the guy's shirt, and Ricki's holding it, and Ricki takes it, and he wraps it up, and he sticks it in his pocket. Yes. Well, besides that, with
that
you know,
style,
and even if he did,
sorry. I was going to say that style of his. That's another reason you couldn't do his act, because that was who he was. He was born in New Jersey. He was really in your face. A little guy like me, you know, stocky little guy, about my height, my size, but he was really like from, you know, like a real, I want to say New Yorker. He was really in your face. Yeah. And that's his style.
I wonder if that's
Well,
that's what Max Malini was like. When you hear about him being kind of an aggressive, brash kind of performer. You were saying that he was one of the first people to use the Toppet as a ditching tool as opposed to a vanisher. And it's interesting because that's full circle. Originally, Toppet came out, Davenport's put it out. Yeah, and it was originally a thief's pocket. And then this guy called Harold Comden put it out with Davenport's way back as a vanisher, and then it's so interesting. It's come full circle to and it is a great ditch. I mean, even for manipulators, if there's a guy I know who does a muscle pass on a coin. So when he does a coin vanish, he just muscle passes that coin into his Toppet. It's the perfect vanish. But this is amazing stuff. So when Ricki was doing, when Ricki would do an egg bag, again, the egg bag is an excuse. But instead of pickpocketing, he turned it around at that point, didn't he? He started putting stuff into people's pockets.
Who was I think you have the manuscript because we talked about this. So if you hear background noise, John Paul's just come home. Means I have to leave shortly. But who was it?
Eddie Joseph. Eddie Joseph has.
So I have that too.
Yeah, right. It's really good body loading.
By the way, Ricki did baby chicks, of course, in that, but he also did the cups and balls with baby chicks. He developed a lot of stuff with baby chicks that nobody knows about. I think Johnny Ace. He knew Johnny Ace Palmer really well. Of course, Johnny Ace is FISM winner with his baby chicks. I'm not sure who helped. I'm not sure if Johnny. I should ask Johnny Ace. I'm not sure if he helped Ricki or Ricki. I don't know how it worked. I remember Ricki told me once, but Ricki did the baby chicks. And he had the pockets to hold the baby chicks. And again, he
had special pockets. He had special pockets in his pockets.
And I think he only had 3 baby chicks. I think it was 3, but he would just keep reloading them in. And as you said, I mean, I asked him. I first saw that performance when I was staying with him, and he said he wanted to take the guy out. Literally, so it was that close to just knocking him out. You could
see it. You could kind of.
If Ricki, he would have done.
Well, the camera hadn't been there. Yeah.
You said one thing about Ricki was the greatest friend.
Oh yeah,
greatest friend. If he was your friend, he would defend you no matter what.
He would.
And so you hear all these stories about people tell stories about Ricki and that. However, half those people, major names in magic, Ricki helped them out.
Yep.
And I'm talking about financially.
Yep.
I'm talking about they needed something. Ricki was the first person there to help them. Mm-hmm. And so they may have made fun of him, but in the long run, a lot of people, I'm not going to mention names now, but there are a lot of people that owed Ricki a huge debt. And he was a fierce friend. I mean,
I'll tell you a funny story.
A fierce friend and a fierce enemy, right? I mean, this is, it seems like there was no middle ground. That was.
Well, here's what he told me.
And a fierce performer. Yes, tell us the story.
No, before he died, this is a true story. Before he died, 2 things. 2 days before he passed away, he phoned me up. And he said to me, and this is when I just went silent on the phone. He said to me, I'll see if I can tell you without choking up. He said, Paul, I've just realized something. I'll never work again. And if you knew Ricki like we did, for him to actually say that, you knew something was up. And 2 days later, he passed away. But he also said, and a couple of weeks before, because he was fighting with pain, he was in so much pain with he had a spinal injury, spinal problem. He had the operation. He went and so he was going to meet me. I was going to look after him. When he was went to the doctors for a checkup, and he bent down he dropped the magazine. And now he'd had the operation. And he was feeling 100%. He said it's incredible. He wanted to drive up to LA, pick me up, but he bent down to pick up a magazine, and something happened with the spine again, and it went back to square one. And from that point on, he just went downhill. But he did say to me, he said, when I go, and I won't say the names of the people, he said, I want you to take my ashes. He said, I want you to take my ashes, and I want you to blow it in the face of these 2 people.
What? Can you text me? Can you text me the list? Can you text me who they are? I won't publish it, but I do want to put some. I'll put some ashes in their egg bags. Yeah.
Steve, did you know David Avedon?
Yeah, briefly when he was early days at the Magic Castle. And then because didn't he write the Joe Bird book as well? David. I feel like David did, but yes,
he wrote a pickpocketing book. Well, he was also very close to Ricki too, and Ricki, they love-hate relationship. Ricki, he really liked him, but he kept saying, he's just trying to get my stuff. He's trying to learn. And David was nothing like Ricki. But,
totally different style of performer.
Totally different style, yeah. But he respected Ricki so much. It's like Paul, myself, David, just a huge love.
Yeah,
I think that's some beautiful. That's a beautiful way to end, by the way.
Yeah.
And then the Ashes story, which we're going to complete Ricki's wishes. So you just let me know.
I might have already done it. If I ever went up to anybody and accidentally blew something on you.
Hey, look, it's gone. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just get that up. Yeah. Well, Ricki's still getting laughs. He's still getting laughs even now.
Yeah,
well,
man.
Listen, guys. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. So this is the book. We'll find out if you can get it from Nielsen. I'm going to get myself a copy. I would suggest everyone else gets yourself a copy.
His routine, by the way, his routine in there is with the egg bag and the watch. It's all in there. Everything. I've got the original manuscript here.
Right. Is the baby chicks in there? Did he publish anything with the baby chicks?
No. But he did show me. He did go through it with me.
I mean, it's difficult now to do stuff with animals anyway.
You couldn't do it with baby chicks. You'd have to do it with lemons or oranges or something else,
Yeah.
Tomatoes. I think tomatoes would be funny.
Well, when you think about
scrambled eggs.
When you think about it, right now, you can't do that act at all.
No.
The pickpocketing, nothing. And it may not be something that can be done for the next year and a half, 2 years.
It might not be, but here's a great thing about it, and I think that it's a good time to practice, and it's a good time because I think that anytime we do magic, the idea of taking something from someone's pocket or putting something in, even if you're doing like the Conus aces, where the aces vanish and appear in someone's pocket, those techniques are so valuable to build confidence, to enable you to come up with extra little punches on tricks. I think it's super worthwhile learning. One final question for you. How did, and maybe you guys know this, how did Ricki practice? What's the best way to learn pickpocketing?
It's in his book.
Okay.
No,
Sorry.
I was just about to mention that. It is actually in his book, and he talks about hanging. He had a dummy, but he also talks about coat hangers and things and how to practice with that.
Okay.
Obviously, the best practices with people, but the techniques of all this other stuff. I think he had it's in the book. He talks about having a mannequin and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? I think you've got to.
Well, the first key is to be personable. You've got to be personable. You have to because if you can't get close enough to anybody, if you can't put your hand on their shoulder, put your arm around them. Hey, how's it going, Evans? Give them a hug. As you're patting them down the steel. Right. If you can't do any of that stuff, pickpocketing's not going to be for you.
Right. I think you're right. I think personality, confidence, and personal hygiene probably very important as well. I would imagine.
Oh yeah. Well, he had.
As you walk up to someone,
he actually had in his kit. He had deodorant, the mouth spray, and before you go on.
Because you don't want someone doing this right when you're
Oh no,
for the wrong reasons. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for your time. This has been a lovely and so great to talk about Ricki in kind of such glowing terms and to keep his memory alive. And we'll leave it with that. We'll leave it with the. We'll talk off camera. We'll talk off camera.
That'll be the salute. That'll be the salute.
The Ricki salute. For you, Ricki.
Thanks.
Thanks, chaps. Take care.
Wasn't that a great interview? Thanks, guys, for doing that for me and for keeping Ricki's name alive. We'll get to this in a minute because a couple of things. After that interview, I did get the book, The Stage Pickpocket, and it is fantastic. There's even a way of doing a watch steal overtly and making a routine out of it where the audience times you like literally on a watch to see how fast you can steal a guy's watch. It's actually a really fun routine. There's a lot of good stuff in the book. Highly recommend it. It is still available. It's still out there. And the other thing is I spoke with the guys afterwards about who the two hated magicians were, the two that Ricki wanted to have his ashes blown in their face. And I'm going to tell you about who they were, because they told me. I'm going to tell you who they were in just a second. But first, just a reminder, I know, don't you hate me right now? That's like, talk about clickbait. But first, just remember, Magicians Only is sponsored by Magic on the Go. I would love it if maybe you would, apart from obviously for the podcast, like, share, and subscribe. It's super important because it helps us get more and more visible, more and more followers. And so all the likes, shares, and subscribes that you can do will be truly appreciated, really, from me. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I would really love it if you check out Magic on the Go. Now, if you're interested in the egg bag, you got to go see the egg bag stuff. It's insane. It's a college level, university level course, just like my Card to Pocket course on how to do the egg bag trick. We talk about the eggs. Yes, you have to discuss the kinds of eggs, real and fake. You got to talk about the bags. You'd be amazed how many different kinds of bags were invented over the last 100 years for the egg bag trick, and so much more. We talk about moves and ideas that were lost to time, kids' routines, adults' routines, whole routines with shots of whiskey. I mean, it's an incredible collection, and it's here as a tribute to really just how creative magicians can be. You know, when they have an idea, when they worry at an idea, they're never satisfied. Like Ricky, like myself, they're never satisfied with what they do and what they've got. They always want to try and make it better. So, and I would really appreciate it if you check out Magic on the Go at magiconthego.com, sponsor for this podcast. And now, drum roll, please. Oh, I don't have any drums. Well, listen. So I reached out to Paul and I said, you have to tell me who the two magicians were. Who were they? Who were the guys that Ricky wanted his ashes blown into their face? And those guys are